Evan Walker walked through the cold, empty street with slow steps. The sky above him was dark purple, filled with silent clouds that moved like smoke. This planet, Varellon 3, was not friendly to humans. The wind felt sharp, and every breath tasted like dust. Evan had been walking for hours, looking for shelter, food, anything. But there was nothing. No shops, no people. No sound. He stopped and placed a hand on his stomach. It growled loudly. He had only one chocolate bar left in his pocket. He had saved it carefully for the last 2 days. Maybe it was foolish, but he kept it because it reminded him of home, of Earth, of better days. Now he was tired, hungry, and cold. But he still didn't eat it. Something inside him whispered he should save it for the worst moment. He looked around and kept walking. Then, he heard something, a small, weak sound. Like a cry. Like someone was trying to call for help but didn't have the strength to speak. Evan froze. Listening carefully, there it was again. A soft voice, almost too faint to hear. He followed the sound into a narrow alley. The walls were tall and broken. Bits of metal and stone lay everywhere. The crying grew louder as he walked deeper. And then he saw her. A tiny alien girl sat against the wall, hugging her knees. She looked no older than 10. Her skin was a soft light blue color, almost glowing. Her hair was silver and messy. Her clothes were torn, and her small hands shook from the cold. Her eyes lifted slowly when she noticed him. They were bright silver, but filled with fear and pain. Please, she whispered. I am hungry. Please, help me. Evan's heart tightened. He looked around, no one else was there. Only this weak little girl, alone and shaking. He stepped closer. Are you hurt? He asked softly. She shook her head. Just hungry. I have not eaten in days. Evan swallowed hard. He looked down at his pocket. His last chocolate bar. The only food he had left. For a moment he hesitated. He was starving too. He could feel his legs trembling from weakness. But the girl looked even worse. Her lips were dry. Her face was pale. She looked like she might faint any second. Evan slowly took out the chocolate bar. The girl stared at it with wide eyes. Like it was something magical. It's all I have, Evan said softly. But you need it more than me. He knelt and placed the chocolate bar in her hands. Her fingers touched it gently, as if she couldn't believe something so small could be real. Thank you, she whispered. She took a small bite, and everything changed. The air around her shimmered. A soft silver glow appeared around her body. Her eyes brightened like 2 shining stars. The dust on the ground began to move as if a gentle wind blew from her skin. Evan stepped back without meaning to. Something was happening. Something strange. The girl blinked, confused at first. Then she looked at Evan with a new expression, calm, serious, almost ancient. You shared your food with me, she said quietly, but her voice no longer sounded weak. It carried a strange power. Before Evan could ask what she meant, a loud sound echoed across the valley. A deep, vibrating roar that made the ground tremble. Evan spun around, trying to understand where it came from. The girl stood up slowly. She looked taller somehow, stronger. Her silver eyes glowed brighter in the dark alley. You should not have done that, human, she whispered. Evan stepped back again. Why? What's happening? Another roar shook the air. This time closer. Much closer. The girl looked toward the street. Her face was no longer scared. It was worried. But in a different way. Like she knew what the sound meant. They will come now, she said. Who? Evan asked. She turned toward him. Her eyes full of something heavy, sadness mixed with warning. The ones who hunt me, she answered quietly. And now, they will hunt you too. Evan felt a chill run through his whole body. What are you? He whispered. The girl stepped closer and gently touched his hand. You gave me food, she said. You gave me kindness. Now you are part of my fate. Another roar echoed so powerful that tiny stones fell from the walls. Evan's heart raced. The girl looked into his eyes. My name is Lyra, she whispered. And I am not a poor child. The wind picked up. Lights flickered in the sky. I am the last princess of Varelen. The ground shook again. Loud footsteps, heavy, metallic, approached them. She grabbed Evan's hand. Run, she said. And the nightmare began. Evan ran beside Lyra, his heart pounding so fast he could barely breathe. The ground behind them shook again as something heavy landed on the street. The sound echoed between the broken buildings like thunder trapped in a cage. Don't stop, Lyra shouted, pulling him forward. Her voice was no longer weak or tired. Instead, it carried strength, power, authority. It was hard to believe this was the same little girl he had seen shaking and hungry minutes before. They turned a corner, and Evan finally dared to ask, "What is chasing us?" Lyra did not look back. "Hunters," she said. "The Iron Hunters." Evan didn't like the way she said that, like the words themselves were dangerous. Metallic clanging echoed behind them. Evan risked a glance over his shoulder, and his stomach dropped. A tall, dark figure stepped into the alley they had just left. Its eyes glowed red. Its armor looked like black stone. Its hands were long, sharp, and metal, not a machine. Not a creature. Something in between, and it was fast. Evan turned back, fear gripping him. "Where do we go?" Lyra pulled him into a narrow opening between two broken walls. "Here, inside the ruins." They squeezed through the gap and entered a large open hall of what once must have been a beautiful alien building. Now the ceiling was broken, and vines glowed softly along the walls. Lyra stopped near a fallen pillar. She placed her hand on it and closed her eyes. The pillar responded. Strange symbols glowed beneath her touch, silver lines running like living veins along the stone. Evan stared in shock. What are you doing?" Lyra whispered, calling the old paths. The pillar shifted, shaking the ground. A hidden door slid open, revealing a narrow downward passage. Evan blinked. "You could open secret doors?" Lyra looked at him with a sad smile. "I told you, Evan. I'm not a normal child." He wanted to ask more, but a loud metallic roar came from behind them. The Iron Hunter was inside the hall. Its red eyes scanned the room, searching. Lyra grabbed his wrist. "Inside, now." They rushed into the passage, and the door closed behind them with a low rumble. The sound of the hunter pounding on the stone followed them as they ran deeper into the dark tunnel. The tunnel opened into a small, underground chamber filled with dim silver light. Old alien crystal lamps hummed softly along the walls. Even though the place was ancient, it felt alive. Evan sat down on a cold stone block, trying to catch his breath. Lyra stood quietly, leaning against the glowing wall, her face calm but sad. Evan studied her for a long moment, her silver eyes, her glowing skin, her strange power. Finally he asked, "Who are you really? And why are they after you?" Lyra looked down at her hands as if she carried the weight of a whole world in her small palms. "My full name is Lyra Valsari, daughter of the High Queen of Varelen," she said softly. "I am heir to the Silver Throne." Evan opened his mouth, but no words came out. A princess. She was actually a princess, and he had given her his last chocolate bar. Lyra continued in a low voice. "My mother was killed. The throne was taken. The Iron Hunters were created to capture me, because only the true heir can unlock the Heartstone, an ancient power that controls our world." Evan swallowed hard. "So you're saying the people who took over your kingdom want your power?" "Yes," she whispered. "And now that you helped me, they will see you as my guardian. They will not stop until we both are captured." Evan let out a shaky exhale. He didn't want any of this. He was just a normal human traveler trying to survive. He was not a soldier, not a hero. He looked at Lyra again. She looked so young, but her eyes held centuries of history. "You didn't tell me everything," he said softly. Lyra nodded. "No, because I didn't trust anyone. Until you shared your food with me." Evan looked away, embarrassed. "It was just a chocolate bar." Lyra stepped closer. "Not for me. Food is sacred among my people. Sharing food means you accept someone into your life. It is a binding act." Evan blinked. "A binding act?" "Yes," she whispered. "By giving me your last food, you created a bond. A protector bond." He stared at her, confused. She added, "It means you are now connected to my fate. You are my chosen protector." Evan felt his heart stop for a moment. "Me? I can't fight those things." "You must," Lyra said gently, touching his hand. "Because without you, I cannot survive. And if I die, your world will fall too." A deep rumble shook the chamber walls. Dust fell from the ceiling. The iron hunters had found a way inside. Lyra tightened her grip on his hand. "Evan, we need to run again." Her silver eyes glowed brighter. "This is only the beginning." The walls of the underground chamber trembled again as another heavy strike echoed above them. Dust fell like gray rain. Evan stared upward in fear. The iron hunters were breaking through stone that had survived centuries. "How strong are they?" Evan whispered. Lyra's voice was calm, but her eyes were serious. "Strong enough to destroy everything. If we don't move now." She pulled him toward another narrow tunnel at the far side of the room. The glowing crystals flickered as they ran, throwing silver shadows that danced across the walls. Behind them came a terrible cracking sound. The chamber roof broke. A loud metallic roar filled the space. "They're in!" Evan shouted. Lyra didn't slow down. "Run faster!" They sprinted into the tunnel just as a massive metal claw smashed into the floor behind them. The iron hunter's red eyes glowed, scanning the darkness. It tried to squeeze through the opening, scraping its armor against the ancient stone. Evan heard sparks fly. The monster was forcing its way in. He didn't wait to see more. He ran with Lyra through the twisting underground halls. The tunnels led them upward, toward the old temple ruins. The air grew colder as they climbed, and the smell of damp stone surrounded them. The walls were carved with ancient symbols, lines, circles, shapes Evan couldn't understand, but Lyra did. She slowed for only a moment to touch one glowing mark. "These are warnings," she said. "My ancestors wrote them to guide us." "Guide us where?" Evan asked. "Toward hope," she answered softly. The moment she finished speaking, a loud metallic crash echoed from below. The hunter had escaped the chamber. Evan's chest tightened. "How many are there?" "3," Lyra said quietly. "But one is enough to kill us." Evan didn't like the way she said one is enough. He wished she had kept that detail to herself. They reached a circular stone platform. The ceiling above had collapsed long ago, revealing a patch of gray sky. Rain started to fall cold and hard. Lyra stepped into the rain, her silver hair glowing under the dim light. She looked strange, beautiful, powerful, and yet still a child. Evan asked, "Where do we go now?" Lyra pointed toward a distant hill. "There is a shelter under the old star temple. If we reach it, we can hide." Evan nodded, ready to run, but the ground behind them split apart with a deafening crack. The iron hunter climbed up from the hole, rising like a nightmare out of the earth. Its red eyes shone like burning coals. Its metal claws scraped the stone. Evan froze. Lyra grabbed his hand and whispered, "Stay behind me." He didn't know whether to obey or run. But he stayed. The hunter stepped forward, its heavy legs shaking the ground. Rain fell on its dark armor. Hissing as it touched the glowing red patterns carved into its body, it raised its claw. Lyra lifted her hand, and suddenly, the silver light inside her burst outward. A small protective shield formed around them, thin, shaking like a bubble made of moonlight. The hunter struck. The shield held. Barely. Cracks spread across it like spider webs. Evan shouted, "Lyra! Stop! You're hurting yourself!" She clenched her teeth. "I must protect you." Her legs shook. Sweat ran down her face. The shield flickered like a dying flame. Evan stepped forward. "Enough, you'll collapse." He grabbed her shoulders and pulled her back. The shield broke. The force threw both of them to the ground. The hunter roared in victory and charged. Evan acted without thinking. He grabbed a broken stone tablet and hurled it at the monster. It hit the hunter's head, not enough to stop it, but enough to make it turn. "Come on!" Evan yelled, pulling Lyra to her feet. They ran across the broken platform as the hunter leapt after them. Its footsteps were so heavy that the ruins shook with every step. Rain poured harder. Lightning flashed across the sky, lighting the hill Lyra had pointed at. "Not far now," she cried, but Evan could hear the iron hunter gaining on them. It was fast. Too fast. They reached a long stone bridge that connected one ruin to another. The narrow path was cracked and unstable. Below it was a deep black pit. Evan hesitated. "If this breaks—" "It won't," Lyra said. She was wrong. The second they ran onto the bridge, a loud crack sliced through the air. The ancient stone began to crumble. The hunter stepped onto the other side and let out a roar that shook loose the first piece of stone. The bridge started falling apart under them. "Run!" Lyra screamed. They sprinted, the ground breaking behind their feet. Evan grabbed Lyra and half-lifted her. Running as fast as he could, the hunter lunged. Its claw almost touched Lyra's hair. They jumped. The last piece of the bridge collapsed behind them. Evan and Lyra landed hard on the other side. Just as the entire bridge fell into the black pit, taking the hunter with it, a long, echoing metallic scream rose from the darkness below. Then silence. Evan lay on the stone, breathing hard. Lyra looked down at the ruined pit and whispered, "One is gone, but two remain." Evan closed his eyes. Their nightmare was only just beginning. Evan lay on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. His arms burned, his legs shook, and his lungs felt like fire. But they were alive, somehow. Alive. Lyra sat beside him, her small frame shivering in the rain. Her silver hair clung to her face, and her clothes were soaked. She stared at the broken bridge, listening to the last fading echoes of the Iron Hunter's fall. One hunter was gone, but the threat was still heavy in the air. Finally she whispered, "Thank you, Evan." He pushed himself up on one elbow. "For what? Running scared with you?" "You saved me again," she said softly. "You carried me over the bridge." Evan rubbed his tired eyes. "Well, you saved me with that shield, so I guess we're even." Lyra gave a small smile, tired, but real. For a moment, they sat in silence, rain falling gently around them. But the quiet didn't last. A deep rumble shook the sky, followed by two distant roars. The remaining hunters were calling to each other. "They know where we are," Lyra said. Evan stood slowly. "Then we move, now." Lyra nodded and pointed toward the hill ahead. "The Star Temple. There's a safe place under it." Evan groaned. "More ancient tunnels? Better than being sliced open by hunters," she replied calmly. He couldn't argue with that. They walked up the long slope, the wind growing colder with each step. Strange blue flowers grew along the hillside, glowing like tiny lanterns. The ruined Star Temple rose at the top, a circle of tall stone pillars, all cracked and half-buried. Evan ran his fingers along the carvings on one pillar. "Looks old." "It is," Lyra said. "My people built it thousands of years ago. Does it still work?" She didn't answer. She simply walked to the center of the temple grounds, kneeling on the stone floor. Evan watched her place her palm on an ancient marking. A faint silver ripple spread across the ground. Then another. The stone lit up in a circular pattern. Like a sleeping mechanism waking after centuries. Evan stepped back in surprise. How do you do that? Lyra looked at him with a sad expression. Because the power inside these stones answers to royal blood. Only someone like me can open these places. Evan thought about that for a moment. She wasn't just a princess. She was a key. A living key. The stone circle shifted, slowly opening like a massive flower. Beneath it was a staircase that spiraled downward into darkness. Lyra took one shaky step toward it and stumbled. Evan rushed to catch her. Hey, you okay? She leaned weakly against him. Using the shield. It drained my strength. Sit down, Evan said firmly. She didn't argue this time. She sank to her knees, breathing heavily, her small shoulders trembling. Evan looked at her closely. You're burning up, Lyra. You're exhausted. She closed her eyes. I used too much power. And I have not eaten real food in a long time. Evan checked his pockets. Empty. I wish I had more chocolate, he muttered. To his surprise, Lyra smiled weakly. Chocolate is wonderful. I never tasted something so sweet. Humans are strange, but kind. Evan sat beside her. The cold wind blew around them, but for a moment, everything felt quiet. Then Lyra whispered something he didn't expect. Evan, I don't know why, but when I tasted your food, my power woke up. I had locked it away inside me because I was afraid. But when you fed me, the lock broke. He frowned. Is that bad? It is. Dangerous, she admitted. My power is not stable. I cannot fully control it. If I use too much, I might hurt people. Even you. Evan stared at her glowing eyes, suddenly understanding a deeper fear she carried, not from the hunters, but from herself. He placed a hand on her shoulder. Lyra, listen to me. You're trying your best. You saved me. You saved us both. And I'm not afraid of you. Her eyes softened. She leaned slightly against him, as if the words gave her strength, but the peaceful moment shattered instantly. A thunderous roar echoed across the sky. Followed by a second, the remaining two hunters had found their trail. Evan jumped to his feet. They're close. Lyra forced herself up, wobbling. Into the temple. The gate must close before they reach us. They hurried down the spiral staircase. The stone petals above them began to close slowly, but not fast enough. Evan heard the heavy metal footsteps approaching. Faster. Faster. Lyra. They're coming. She turned, raised her hand, and pushed out a wave of silver energy. The stone petals slammed shut. The hunters' claws scraped the stone from the outside, screaming. Roaring, hammering. But the gate held. For now. Lyra slumped against the wall. We have little time. They will break through eventually. Evan steadied her. Then we find a way out. And we keep moving. Lyra looked up at him, tired, scared, but grateful. You should have walked away from me on that street, she said softly. Evan shook his head. Too late now. She smiled faintly. Thank you, human. Far above them, the hunters roared again. Their nightmare was far from over. The stone petals above them shook violently as the iron hunters slammed their metal fists against the sealed temple gate. Each hit echoed through the spiral stairway like a drumbeat of doom. Dust rained from the ceiling. Old cracks spread along the stone. Evan looked up with fear. Lyra. This door isn't going to last long. Lyra stood weakly beside him, leaning against the cold wall. Her silver eyes glowed dimmer than before. She had used too much power, and her small body looked fragile. They are using their full strength, she whispered. Two hunters. Together. The gate cannot hold forever. Evan clenched his fists. Then we need another exit. Fast. Lyra nodded. There is a tunnel. It leads deeper under the Star Temple. But it is dangerous. More dangerous than staying here. Evan asked. She shook her head. No, staying here means death. That was enough for him. He guided Lyra down the rest of the staircase until they reached a wide underground chamber. It was filled with ancient symbols, large pillars, and glowing crystal veins running along the walls. The air felt heavy, like something powerful was sleeping beneath the ground. Lyra pointed toward a smaller hallway on the right. That way. But before they could move, a loud thunderous boom echoed above. The entire temple shook. The hunters were breaking through. Evan grabbed Lyra's hand. Go! They rushed into the hallway. The narrow path curved like a maze. Strange carved stones lined the walls, glowing brighter as Lyra walked past them, reacting to her presence. Evan realized again that she wasn't just royalty. She was something ancient, something connected to the very bones of this planet. But they didn't have time to think. A sudden blast of hot air burst through the hallway behind them. Then came the sound of stone shattering. They broke the gate. Evan shouted. Lyra stumbled. They are coming fast. Evan picked her up without hesitation. She felt light, too light for someone who had run so far. She rested her head on his shoulder, breathing quickly. You don't have to carry me, she whispered. Too bad, he replied. I'm doing it anyway. Thunderous footsteps shook the ground. The hunters' metal bodies crashed through the broken temple gate and into the tunnels. Their roars echoed like monsters. Made of steel. Evan ran faster. The tunnel opened into a cavern filled with floating platforms made of ancient crystal. Each platform glowed a soft silver, suspended in the air by some old forgotten magic. Below them was a dark pit so deep that Evan couldn't see the bottom. He stepped back. You've got to be kidding me. This is the trial path, Lyra said weakly. Only royal guardians used it long ago. How did they get across? Evan asked. They jumped. Evan stared at the large gaps between the floating platforms. Jump? With what legs? These drops are huge. You can do it, Lyra whispered. I trust you. He shook his head, terrified. I wish I trusted me like that. A metallic roar behind them cut off his thought. The hunters were close. Evan took a deep breath, tightened his grip around Lyra, and jumped onto the first platform. It shook under his weight, but held. Another roar. Closer. Evan jumped to the second platform. Then the third. The pit below them swallowed every sound except their heartbeat, and the hunters' thunderous footsteps. But the hunters did not stop at the edge. To Evan's horror, the first hunter leapt, its metal body flying through the air, and landed on the crystal platform behind them with a heavy thud. Evan nearly slipped. Lyra, I can jump. She held tighter to him. Keep going. Evan leapt again, landing on a narrow platform that almost tipped over. His heart pounded. The hunter jumped again, closer now, only 2 platforms behind. The second hunter appeared at the edge, its red eyes glowing like burning suns. It too leapt across. Evan's breath grew sharp and painful. His legs trembled. There were only 3 platforms left before the exit tunnel. He jumped to the next one, but the platform cracked beneath him. Evan! Lyra cried. He pushed upward with all the strength left in his legs and threw himself toward the next platform, barely catching the edge with one hand. His feet dangled over the endless pit. He held Lyra tightly in his other arm. His grip slipped. The hunter landed on the platform behind them, shaking it violently. Evan lost his hold. Lyra screamed, and suddenly her silver power burst out involuntarily. A wave of light exploded from her body, pushing both hunters backward and forming a temporary bubble around the falling humans. Evan and Lyra were thrown upward onto the last platform. They landed hard. Rolling across the glowing stone, Lyra collapsed. Drained completely, Evan lifted her weak form. "You're okay. You're okay. I've got you," she whispered with trembling lips. "I can't control it." Evan held her close. "You don't have to. I'm here." The hunters roared again, shaking the platforms as they prepared to leap. Evan didn't wait. He ran into the exit tunnel, carrying Lyra with everything he had left behind them. The platforms began to collapse. The hunters chased. The nightmare deepened. Evan's legs screamed in pain, but he did not stop running. Lyra lay against his chest, so light and cold that he feared she might disappear if he loosened his grip even a little. The tunnel ahead stretched long and dark, the air thick with ancient dust. Behind them, the iron hunters roared as they leapt across the breaking crystal platforms. The entire cavern shook with each metallic landing. Their red eyes glowed in the darkness like burning lanterns searching for prey. Evan's breath came out in sharp bursts. He was exhausted, but he had no choice. Lyra's whisper brushed against his ear. "Evan, we must reach the sacred tower." He didn't slow. "Where is that?" "On the surface," she whispered. "Beyond the river of light. Past the floating stones. And across the frozen crater. That sounds far," Evan said, not hiding the panic in his voice. Lyra nodded weakly. "It is, but it is our only chance." They reached the end of the tunnel. A circular stone door sat before them, sealed with glowing markings that pulsed in slow, deep breaths like a living creature. Evan gently lowered Lyra beside it. "Can you open it?" Lyra tried to lift her hand but couldn't even raise her arm. "I cannot. My power is empty. You must do it." Evan stared at the glowing symbols. "Me? Lyra, I'm human. I can't open ancient alien doors." She shook her head faintly. "You can. Because of the protector bond. My power is linked to you now. Touch the stone." Evan swallowed hard, unsure, but he pressed his palm against the cold surface. The markings reacted instantly. Light shot across the stone, forming bright rings around his fingers. A hum rose from the ground. The giant door trembled, then slowly began to slide open. Evan blinked. "Whoa. It actually worked." "You carry a part of my energy," Lyra whispered. "My ancestors would accept your touch." The moment the door opened wide enough, cold air rushed in. Evan grabbed Lyra again and stepped outside. The world he saw took his breath away. A wide valley stretched before them, glowing with rivers made of shimmering blue light. Strange floating stones drifted slowly through the air like islands in the sky. The ground sparkled with crystal dust. In the far distance, a tall tower reached up into the clouds, glowing with silver fire. "The sacred tower," Lyra said softly. "The heart of my people." Evan stared at the massive structure. "We need to get all the way there?" "Yes. Before the hunters reach us." A thunderous crash echoed behind them. The hunters were breaking through the tunnel. Evan tightened his hold. "No time, we move." He ran down the slope toward the glowing river. The surface shimmered like melted stars flowing through the land. It wasn't water. It wasn't light. It was something in between. "How do we cross that?" he asked. Lyra pointed weakly at the floating stones drifting above the river. "Jump across those." Evan stared up at the stone platforms, moving slowly in different directions. "You're kidding," he whispered. Lyra shook her head. "It is the only way." Another metallic roar thundered behind them. Evan had no more time for fear. He leapt onto the first floating stone. It shook under his weight. He quickly jumped to another, then another. His feet almost slipped off the smooth surface every time, and Lyra clung weakly to him. Her breath shallow, a loud crash boomed behind them. The first iron hunter burst out of the tunnel, landing at the river's edge. Its red eyes locked onto them. It leapt. Faster! Lyra cried. Evan took a deep breath and jumped onto a large moving stone that drifted high above the river. The hunter landed on a platform close behind, cracking it under its weight. Lightning-like energy flashed in the water like below. Evan jumped again, barely avoiding the hunter's claw as it swiped at his leg. The second hunter appeared from the tunnel. Two hunters now chased them across the floating stones. Lyra's voice trembled. If we can reach the other side, the tower's field will protect us. Evan didn't understand what she meant, but he didn't stop. He jumped, slipped, recovered, and leapt again. Finally, the last stone hovered over solid ground. Evan landed, rolling forward with Lyra in his arms. The hunters prepared to jump after them. But the instant they leapt, a strong silver wave erupted from the ground around the tower's valley. A protective field. The hunters crashed into it mid-air, sparks exploding from their bodies as the energy slammed them back into the river of light. They screeched in anger, unable to enter the valley. Evan stood trembling, breathing hard. We made it. Lyra smiled weakly in his arms. Yes. For now. The sacred tower rose tall before them, glowing like a shining beacon. Lyra looked at it with both fear and hope. Evan, she whispered, everything ends, or begins, inside that tower. Evan held her tighter. Then let's finish this. They walked forward toward the final battle. Evan carried Lyra up the final slope toward the sacred tower. The ground hummed softly beneath their feet, glowing like starlight trapped in stone. The air felt different here, peaceful, warm, alive, like the land itself recognized Lyra and welcomed her home. But the silence did not last. On the far side of the valley, beyond the protective field, the two iron hunters paced back and forth, smashing their fists against the invisible barrier. Their metal bodies sparked with red anger. Their roars echoed across the hills, shaking the air. Lyra whispered, they cannot enter, but they can still watch. They will wait for us to come out. Evan sighed. So, no going back. Lyra rested her head against his chest, her eyes half closed. No going back. They reached the base of the sacred tower. It stood taller than any building Evan had ever seen. The entrance door was shaped like a rising sun, covered in silver carvings. Evan gently placed Lyra on her feet. Can you open this one? She nodded weakly and pressed her palm against the door. A warm light spread out from her hand. The giant door trembled, then slowly rose, opening with a deep ancient sound. Soft silver mist flowed out like breath from a sleeping giant. The inside was beautiful. Tall crystal pillars glowed with soft colors. A circular platform sat in the center, floating slightly above the ground. Strange energy swirled around it like calm water made of light. Lyra limped toward it, her legs shaking. Evan supported her, terrified she would fall. What is this place? Evan whispered. The heart chamber, Lyra said softly. Here, I can awaken the ancient guardians of my world. But only if I have enough strength. Evan looked at her pale face. You don't have enough strength. I must try. She stepped onto the floating platform. Silver lines lit up beneath her feet, spreading outward like roots of light. The entire tower responded, humming with rising energy. But the moment she tried to raise her hands, her body collapsed to her knees. Lyra! Evan grabbed her before she hit the ground. She shook her head. I cannot do it. Then don't, Evan said firmly. Rest first. There is no time. Lyra whispered. The hunters. The throne, my world. Everything will fall if I fail. Evan tightened his arms around her. Lyra, listen. You've been running, fighting, and starving for days. You're just a kid. I am the last princess, she whispered. And you're still a kid, Evan repeated. You're exhausted. You're scared. You're alone. Except for me. Her silver eyes softened. Then something unexpected happened. The floating platform glowed brighter where Evan sat holding her. The lines of light began reacting, responding to him. Lyra gasped. Evan, the bond. It connects us, my power. It can flow through you. Evan's breath caught. You mean, we can do this together? Yes, she whispered. If you allow it. He didn't even hesitate. He placed his hands over hers. Then let's do it. A surge of energy rushed through them. Lyra's silver power flowed like warm light into Evan's body. His heart pounded. His vision filled with bright shapes and colors. But he did not let go. Lyra's voice echoed faintly in his mind. Guide the light. Don't fight it. Evan focused. The symbols on the platform exploded with brightness. The tower shook as ancient machinery awakened. The crystal pillars lit up one by one like stars being born. Outside, the iron hunters stopped pacing. They sensed the awakening dot with furious screams. They hurled themselves against the barrier. Sparks flew. The ground trembled. Inside the tower, the light grew stronger. Evan and Lyra stood together, glowing like two suns. Their combined power rose into the air, swirling and twisting until it formed a giant sphere of pure silver light. Lyra opened her eyes fully, now bright. Beautiful, filled with strength. Evan, she whispered. Release it. Evan nodded and lifted his hands. The sphere of light burst upward, shooting through the ceiling like a beam that pierced the sky. A deep rumble spread across the land. Ancient guardians, silver, statues of giant winged beings, awakened from the ground around the tower. Their eyes glowed blue. Their bodies hummed with power. One by one, they rose into the air like silent protectors. Outside the barrier, the hunters froze. Then they tried to run. Too late. The guardians raised their hands, and a wave of silver fire swept across the valley. The iron hunters screamed as their bodies melted under the holy energy. Metal cracked. Circuits burned. Their red eyes turned dark. And then, silence. The hunters were gone. Evan collapsed to his knees, breathing hard. The energy drained out of him like water leaving a cracked bowl. Lyra fell beside him, weak but smiling softly. You did it. Evan whispered, we did it. She corrected. Outside, the guardians stood watch around the tower, ready to protect their princess again. Lyra reached for Evan's hand. You gave me your last food. And your last strength. No human ever showed such kindness. Evan smiled tiredly. I couldn't leave you. She squeezed his fingers gently. My people will come soon, Lyra whispered. When they see you, they will bow to you. For saving their future. Evan raised an eyebrow. Bow to me? Yes, she said with a soft laugh. You are my protector. My chosen one. The silver light around them dimmed slowly. But the bond between them stayed bright. And so ended the journey of a starving human and a poor alien girl. Who wasn't poor at all. She was a princess. A power. A future. And all of it began with a single chocolate bar.